my name's Joshua. Crush 40 are one of my favorite bands, and they just released a new song today called Call Me Crazy. I thought it would be fun to make a chord chart for it, so I thought I would record the process and talk a little bit about what's going through my head while I work, and maybe you'll learn something from it, or you'll at least find it interesting. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm listening to it, and I'm opening up a metronome finder thing. I tap, you can see me tapping the key to find the tempo. There's about 150 beats per minute, so I'm writing a little quarter note equals 150 at the top of the score. That says there are 150 beats per minute in the song. It's a moderate to fast tempo. It's in 4/4 meter as well, 4/4 time. It's also called common time. So I put that up there. I probably should have put it a little bit lower, but yeah, I don't know. You can't really see me. I picked up my guitar pick there. That's a Sonic the Hedgehog, custom Sonic the Hedgehog guitar pick, by the way. The guitarist for this band gave it to me. I probably shouldn't play it, but I play it all the time, as you can see by the faded paint on it. I picked up my pick because I was using my guitar to check the key of the song. It's in E major, and it's a little bit... It's hard to explain how to find the key of a song, but basically I try to figure out whatever is the most settled note, whichever one doesn't pull my ear somewhere. Okay, so here I'm listening to the chords and writing down what I hear. I'll quit talking so you can hear a little bit. Well, I stopped the recording. So I'm writing down what I hear. I'm listening for the bass notes primarily, and then I'm basing, I already know that the key is E major, and so I'm listening for the bass notes in relation to that. And from there I can work out the chord qualities. So I work out the bass note first. I am not using my guitar for this. I've trained over time to be able to tell what note in the key I'm hearing. The little sign that looks kind of like a division or percentage sign is a repeat. That just means that the chord is still playing through that bar. It's not really necessary to put it there, but I figured I would. At this point, I'm kind of trying to decide how to go about, you can see me hesitating there. I'm trying to decide how to write this repeat, because the section repeats twice, but the second time there's a B chord in the 5th bar, and so I was trying to decide whether to write it out again, or to just make a little note saying the second time to have a B chord. So this is the chorus. I wrote a little letter B next to it. That means B section. It's the second section of the song. I could have written chorus as well, but I prefer to use the alphabet because I don't have to be inconsistent with my labels. So here there are 2 chords in the bar, and I just put it at the halfway mark. And because the rhythm is a little bit specific there, I wrote a couple rhythm slashes, 2 quarter notes. As you can probably guess, the little line through the following bar just means to disregard that one. I'm trying to keep it to roughly 4 bars per system. I put parentheses around it and a 1 to note that you only do that special rhythm the first time, and the second time you don't. It might not have been necessary. So the second time, so after this chorus, an E chord plays for 4 bars, and from there, well, you'll see. It's all right. I try to bounce back each and every night. It's not the worst I've been through. We should get it in your head and I'm sick of you. Stand back, away. I don't care what you do or what you say. Let me out, let me free. Get away from me. Let it go. You don't know. So at this point, I noticed something about the last bar of the verse. It played a very specific rhythm, and I realized I might have missed one at the beginning of at the first verse, so I went back and listened to it again. It's 4 eighth notes and then a half note. So I decided to write that in. The second time, the third note in that group is not played. As you might have guessed, I'm writing down rhythms that are sort of important to the structure of the song. And then blank bars are ones where the rhythm is up to you, really. I put a little X above that third note and saying the second time not to play that one. It's maybe not the clearest of notation, but by the way, note that this chord progression is the same as the one in the verse, except that there's a B chord at the very end of the bar. The B chord is the 5 chord of the key, that's the dominant chord, and it tends to pull really strongly to the tonic, which is the first chord of the key the chord the song is centered around. And so generally you'll see the dominant chord show up at the ends of sections when it's trying to lead into transition into something else. And that's kind of the difference between the verse and chorus structure there. So here I just put a little, it looks like a target. It's called a coda. After the second chorus, it plays that E chord again, but instead of 4 bars, it's 2 bars, and from there you jump to a new section. So I put a little sign saying to coda. Coda, it's traditionally more like the end of the song. In this case, I'm using it to jump ahead to a new section, which is the solo. The little DS refers to, it means dal segno, it means to go back to the segno or sign, which I put at the beginning of the A section, and play up until you see instructions to move to the coda. Anyway, I'm talking through it, but I'm working out the chords to the solo. So the structure of the solo, it's how do I do math? It's, I think, 18 bars, and the first 8 bars are repeated. I considered putting repeat signs there, which I suppose would have been appropriate for a rhythm section, but considering that it's all new material, I thought it might have been better to go ahead and write out the second 8 bars separately. Here, it actually changes keys from E major to the relative minor, which is C sharp minor. It's a very subtle modulation because those keys are extremely closely linked. The most closely linked out of any pair of keys. That sort of modulation happens quite often in pop and rock music. The chorus here just repeats in the way that the original did. I could have written instructions to go back to the first chorus and then move up to here, but that might have been a little bit complicated. I didn't really explain what I was doing too well earlier. I said I was listening for the bass notes primarily, and then from there I could work out the chord qualities, whether it was a major chord or a minor chord or whatever. It's kind of two separate skills. You learn to identify the notes, the individual notes relative to a particular tonic. And that's not perfect pitch, that's more like a relative thing. So it's the ability to identify the tonic or the key note as the one, and then from there you work out everything relative to that. So A is 4, B is 5, and so on. So that's a skill. And then you learn to identify certain chord qualities. And you can put those together to work out chord progressions very quickly. It's just a matter of what you get used to. So here, these little parallelograms are slash notation for open notes. I just tied them together, and it's a slower rhythm at that point. At this point I was getting a little bit confused as to the form of the part after the chorus, so I was scrolling back a little bit further to get my bearings. So at this point I realized that the bar that I had crossed out was actually in use, because I thought it was going to move on to a new unit or group of bars again, in the way that it did after the chorus, but I realized it didn't. It actually played a C sharp minor there, so I wrote that in. It's called a deceptive cadence, by the way. Any cadence where you go from the 5 chord, the dominant chord, to something that's not the tonic is called a deceptive cadence. Most often it's a resolution to the 6th chord, in this case C sharp minor. We're back in E, by the way, if you didn't notice. sometimes I can keep writing down things while the song is playing and just retain what was in my memory, but sometimes in the case like this, it's a little complicated and it might be better to just stop the recording while you're writing. I crossed out outro there because I thought it was going into another chorus, but it wasn't.
Go away.
And that's the song. I'm putting a double line with a thick border at the end of it. That's called a fine. I think that's how it's pronounced. Maybe I'm going with the wrong pronunciation, but it's the final bar line, let's say that. And that's the song. It's fairly simple. This isn't the most detailed or even the most clear chord chart, but I was trying to do it in something of a hurry so that I didn't waste people's time thinking. I didn't really think about the idea that I could just speed up the parts that I was thinking things through, but that ended up not being necessary. So at this point I'm just kind of like running through the chart so you can see how it flows. I don't think I mentioned it before, but those double bar lines with 2 dots next to them, it kind of looks like a colon. Those are repeat bar lines, and so just repeat what's inside of them before you continue. I like that transition. If you're curious as to where I got this paper, by the way, it's just like stock staff paper that I printed off of some templates from that were preloaded onto a printer. It's nothing special. Remember what I said about the dominant chord at the end of the chorus? You'll see at the ends of sections, like here. Note that the B chord was all but avoided up until that point. Dominant chords, 5, flat 7, flat 2, sometimes 3, are generally reserved for transitionary points like that. The more orally trained of you might hear that he's playing the ninths of these chords in the background. I decided not to include that information because I didn't feel that it was very important to the type of chart that I was making. That information might be more important if you're trying to do a more detailed thing, but I felt that it was better to keep things simple. I used to be very, very specific with my chord names and charts, but over time I've started leaving out details when I feel that they're not essential. At this point, I realized that because all the instruments had stopped, I should probably put in rests at the ends of those two at those two bars. That's the song.